council members specifically requests that an item on the consent agenda be removed and considered separately. Items on the consent agenda are considered under one motion, a second, and a vote. Any item removed from consent agenda shall be placed at the end of general business. Tonight on the consent agenda, we have January 22nd, 2024 council meeting minutes, the January claims approval, resolution 2024-05, joint resolution requesting concurrent detachment and annexation of land, resolution 2024-06, establishing a ballot board, resolution 2024-07, ordering improvements for the 2024 overlay project, resolution 2024-08, declaring the official intent of the city of Credit River to reimburse certain expenditures from the proceeds of improvement bonds to be issued by the city, and approving the NSU 2024 proposed rates. Is there anything on there that any council members would like to remove and consider separately? Otherwise, I would take a motion to approve consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Bill.
I'll second.
Thank you, Abe. Got a motion and a second to approve consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Open forum. The public forum is intended to afford the public an opportunity to address concerns to the council. The public forum will be no longer 30 minutes in length, and each presenter will have no more than 5 minutes to speak. Topics of discussion are restricted to local governmental topics rather than private or political agendas. The council may discuss, but will not take formal action on public forum presentations. Do we have anybody that signed up for public forums? No? Okay, just quick. We are asking if people do intend to speak in public forum to sign up. If you don't, we're not going to hold you to that. We'll still allow you to speak, but we're trying to get it to be a little more organized. So we don't have the anybody want to speak for open forum in that awkward silence for 30 seconds. So we will take anybody who wants to speak in open forum though at this time.
There's that awkward silence.
I know, right? That's exactly what we're trying to work on, right?
Please.
3 or 4 seconds seems like it goes on for a long time, you know, when it's quiet.
If they don't sign up, then we get 1 minute, right?
Yeah, then we should make that the new rule, right?
Yep.
Goes down to, you lose 4 minutes, no, we'll still good at it. Again, it's just, we're trying to, make that a little more organized opportunity there. All right, so we will close open forum and move into general business. 7.1, consider approval of part-time accounting technician position, Administrator Reynolds.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Go through tonight. Tonight we're looking at the consideration of a part-time accounting technician position for the city. As we go, the job duties for this accounting tech would be looking at coming in and assisting with the accounts payable, ensuring that we have accurate timely payment of all claims, vendor management, and all things associated with the accounts payable, looking at payroll and helping in completing the bi-weekly payroll, which right now with all the election judges coming on for 3 different elections, and I think it's 64 days prior to every election, we're adding a lot of individuals to our payroll on a bi-weekly basis. And then all the associated reporting and payments that go along with the payroll processing, utility billing, preparing the monthly invoices, getting those sent out, and then completing the monthly ACH draw for those that are on automatic draw for their utilities for the CSTS systems, and then also the accounts receivable. So completing the bank deposits and the appropriate recording of payments, a lot of which are related there to the utility billing and the utility payments coming in. Those are the kind of the positions that we're looking at, roles and responsibilities for the accounting tech. We are estimating this at about 10 to 15 hours per week. And that's what kind of where we're at as far as timing for this is we think 10 to 15 hours per week. A utility billing week that coincides with the payroll week may have, be closer to 15. If we don't have either of those things going on, maybe it's closer to a 10-hour week that we're looking at for the position. And the goal is really just to help take these job functions, these kind of dailies as we find them off of our finance director and get them rolling on kind of a regular routine basis. That way So we can free up the finance director's time really to do finance director level work. As we have more and more of that with the financial analysis and reporting and other kind of higher level accounting work that we need to be focused on and being accomplished. So like I said, this position is really to look at taking those responsibilities off of the finance director. Compensation wise, you can see I put together, I had some questions on the compensation we had proposed within the agenda packet. So here's a list of comparables. I looked at the 2023 League of Minnesota Cities compensation study. So this is everybody assigning their positions to the various definitions and positions that are out there. So you can see accounting tech, the UB is utility billing, and then you have payroll. So some organizations have different amounts and different personnel doing all these different functions. In other places, they may only have a single person. So I kind of did a comparison. I call it the Scott County communities. You will see Lakeville is in there. Lakeville is not a Scott County community, but because it borders us, I do add them kind of to that Scott County comparable mix. And then I pulled some data from some comparable communities that are outside of Scott County. We're looking at the lines of like Corcoran, Minnetrista, Carver, looking at smaller communities that are kind of comparable to our side. So just putting out there, this is kind of the data that we looked at. This is 2023 information. You can see I have the 24 COLA. I don't have it for all of the communities. I don't know what every single community implemented. So like on the Scott County side, I'm not sure what Lakeville did for a COLA for 2024, nor Scott counties. As we look at the comparable communities, we do have, you can see like Minnetrista had a 3%, Carver did do a 6% on theirs. Let me see if I can adjust the larger screen, find and remove the box there so everybody can see the other side of the slide. So you can see Carver had looking at a 6% and Minnetrista had a 3%. I didn't have Corcoran's or Chaska's what the COLA was that they did in 24. So that was kind of the comparable data that we looked at to come up with our proposed rates. So looking at Scott County, so this is kind of taking this down. I lined up all of the accounting technician data from the previous slide and averaged out the minimum and the maximums, and then I took it times the 3% using that COLA to make it a 2024 data. So you can see the accounting technician 2852 to 3643 is kind of the average of the comparables. A payroll, when we looked at the average of the comparables, went from 3245 to 4151, and utility billing went from 2803 to 3425. And we look at the comparable communities, so those outside Scott County, you can see the comparables, kind of the average from all of those with the 3% COLA. I didn't use the 6%, even though we know that one of those comparable communities had a 6% adjustment. So I just used the 3% to kind of show where it would be at. That gives, kind of looking at that, the proposed range that we had for the position that I put into the recommendation is 2862 to 3574 is the range that we had. That range matches kind of the 25% spread that we currently have in our ranges for the other positions that the city has at this point in time. So that's the cost and how we came up with the compensation or the proposed compensation for the position. Then just kind of as a background to look at, here's some positions that are currently posted that were out on the Weeks site the other day that I pulled up. Richfield, you can see their salary range for an accounts payable type position. Requirements, high school diploma and 3 years experience, which matches what our job description has in it. Richfield also has a payroll position posted. See the salary range for their payroll position. High school diploma and 2 to 3 years payroll experience. Savage has an accounts accounts receivable, payroll, escrow, looking at their job description. I didn't put down the titles of their positions, but basically looking at the job description of the types of things that would be in it. Those match the type, many of the things that this individual would also be doing. They're asking for an associate's degree and 3 years experience, so that one does have a higher education requirement. And then you can see Cottage Grove is the last one. And this was kind of a finance assistant doing scanning and daily bank deposits, preparing those and entering some journal entries. And this one had a high school diploma requirement. So you can see some comparables of what's currently out there in regards to, in addition to just the comparable data that we looked at for the salary range. That is all I have at this point in time. Happy to answer any questions on the position. Like I said, we are looking at it for a part-time, 10 to 15 hours a week. We would like it to start as soon as possible. We could get it posted, just to help us get on top of all these items and allow Dominique to start focusing in on some of the higher level items. And as far as we estimated this at about approximately $19,000 for the remainder of the year. We do have funds that we believe that cover this with a, a zero, kind of a zero budget impact. That is looking at, we had raised some money. Currently, we have a deputy, kind of a contract position for a deputy treasurer. We put in increased funds in the budget for that position or for that contract this year. But really looking at the position and the needs, it's not just her ability to come in around her full-time job to help us out periodically is great, but it doesn't give us that continual full-time support that we really think we need. So we have some additional funds that we added to the budget. We put 5,000 addition. There's already 5,000 in the budget, so there's $10,000 there. Would propose that some of that stay there and not use all of that because she has the ability to back Dominique up. If Dominique takes a vacation and we need some finance director assistance, she's appropriately versed and knows her stuff that can help come in and help us at that higher level. In addition, we did have health benefits budgeted for an employee who's no longer or is not taking health benefits. And so that those two pots of money give us the $19,000 that we need to be able to cover this position with no budget impact. So we would happy to answer any questions in regards to the position or the proposed salary range or anything else.
Councilmember Schomer.
Mr. Mayor, in the 19,000, I would say that probably it would be 14,000 coming out of our coffers because the others would be passed through for CSDS and stuff.
Enterprise funds.
So that, just throwing that out there, something else to consider to be quite a bit less.
Yeah, because this position would be processing utility bill.
Billing.
Right.
I have a question. Is, assuming that this is a 10 to 15 hour a week, makes it part-time, it's not eligible for benefit payment costs?
That's correct. It doesn't have, I mean, it has para, it's eligible for para. The new state requirement for the earned sick and safe leave, it does make it eligible for that. That allows them to take time off, but it doesn't have a payout on it. So they'd be eligible for those, but they're not eligible for health care, health, dental, life insurance. They're not eligible for PTO or any of those items.
Next.
Do we think we're gonna find someone for 10 to 15 hours? I think that's a hard find. Are we?
You never know.
You never know. Is it gonna be flexible in time so that if somebody was also working a full-time job, that there'd be opportunities for some flex in it so that would increase our opportunity or chances of finding somebody?
Absolutely. The biggest, there's certain days that, utility billing needs to be done, that we would need to have, kind of coordinating and working with some more of that timings, and then payroll, the payroll weeks, just making sure that the timing is such that they can get in and complete the payroll and all the payroll processing before it needs to be out to the banks in order for the direct deposits to hit. But unlike a lot of locations where you have a much earlier deadline, ours is pretty. You have not the whole week, but you have a longer length lead time that we can utilize before it has to be to the bank
Sure.
for direct deposits, so. But, you know, knowing there's certain deadlines and certain things that have to occur, but there is flexibility for the position. For what works with somebody's schedule to kind of come in on various days, hours, and work with it, so. I do believe at 10 to 15, it's hard, but I'm hoping that we can find somebody, to be able to do it.
What about tech or licensing space? How do we feel about all that? Is that in their budget?
With the positions, yes, we had, the computer for, planner and public works. So and then we have kind of the older computer, so I think there's some flexibility there that part-time public works is gonna be in and out and doing that we can coordinate all of that with the tech that we have. The hardest part on the tech right now is just with the financial system that we have and the way that it's accessed. But that is workable and we can work with it, so. We see no, computer licenses are not an issue at this point in time for the position.
Space here?
Space, there's a double desk in Dominique's
See
office,
the partner up.
so, yeah, it'd be some partnering up and working that way.
She'll have to train them in anyhow.
I have a few questions about the job itself, so let's take it one step at a time. Yeah, so they're gonna be collecting the CSDS bills, basically billing it out and then collecting, is that correct?
Correct. I mean,
Generally,
yeah,
Oversight,
so we have a couple hundred bills that they have to send out every month and then collect every month,
actually too.
couple hundred, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then AP, I think everyone understands that paying vendors, receiving the bills. Do they have accounting entries or are they just paying the bills?
it's the entire processing of it, so there will be.
Are they coding it to the proper accounting codes or are they just paying the bills, sending it, putting the bill, putting a check in the envelope, writing a check out?
They would be,
I'm trying to get a sense for how complex this job is. Because you can have 18 clerks that all they do is a very simple job. And then you can have other accounting technicians that do accounting as well as the menial tasks. And what
so there would be the receipts,
I received the bill,
receive the majority of what we receive is utilities, because we have a lot of electronic.
Yeah.
The electronic probably would, continue, at the higher level, component. And then, so it would be the receipts and, invoicing, then how the process works. So it's Kathy reviews, invoices. And then, they get quoted up and then
Who
they
quotes
would process
who
them.
holds that?
The owner, like by design, it'll be the owner of the expense.
Okay,
So
so not this position tech, it'll be,
I would imagine they would do some of it, but definitely it would be reviewed.
all right, and then,
I would just add to it is, it's like we're in transition right now with, Dominique doing all of the coding of the invoices as she's paying them, and I kind of glance at it because I review the invoice up front and then I'm reviewing, the output from Dominique's, and I kind of glance through all that. With this position, we'd be transitioning to hopefully we're getting our staff more informed in their GLs and their codes so that they're doing the initial code. This position is going to have to be reviewing it and verifying and making sure that and asking questions. So it's not just a blanket, take whatever anybody gives you, but asking questions to make sure it's right, to verify it. And then on the backside, it'll still have a review of an approval
Which is-
process.
Fine, okay. And then for payroll, is it, are they doing full payroll or are they doing pieces of it? Are they considered a payroll manager? So they're gonna manage the whole process? And there's lots of steps, you know, it's a
I think
complicated
that's-
process.
That's
that what
the
you're doing?
intent, and then I would review all the steps, so you.
So they'll file with the state all the forms, they'll submit all
Yeah.
this,
But everything will be approved before they file it.
but they will do all the work, you're just approving it.
Yeah.
And that makes me feel a little better, because that's, payroll management job as opposed to someone just entering hours in the system. And, sending your stuff,
Yeah.
or sending your stuff out.
The time clocks, yeah, the time cards.
The reason why I'm asking these questions is that I never had, first of all, I'm in favor of this position and the I also have concerns about trying to find someone that can take it, but hopefully maybe a retired person that's got an accounting background and finance background can pick it up. I had never heard of an accounting technician position before. My only concern is that are we sliding this job into a higher, more complex role, which means you have to pay more money versus a clerk position, which is your simple steps of billing, simple steps of collect, paying bills, and simple steps that happen with a payroll clerk. So there was some things in the job description that we didn't even talk about. There's grant writing or grant research and all that stuff, and I just want to make sure we're not making this job description more complex than what I thought it was initially going to be. And because it's more complex, we have to pay more. And I appreciate the League of Minnesota City compensation. I haven't seen this. This makes me feel a little better. The private sector pays accounting clerks a lot lower than this. If you take a look at your labor statistics, it's like 10 to 15% lower. I didn't see any billing clerks on here. I didn't see any AP clerks on here. I would guess that these cities have those too. And an accounting technician, I had to look it up because I didn't even know what an accounting technician was, and maybe that's just a government job title. Accounting technician, I think I read, was like an assistant controller level, and I didn't think we're hiring an assistant controller level position for 10 to 15 hours a week.
No, the job description is basically from other accounting technician positions that I pulled off of the League of Minnesota Cities when I started creating it. It matches, the League of Minnesota Salary Survey has definitions and, here's the job descriptions that you're putting people to, and here's kind of the definition of what are the responsibilities, and it matches what we're having them do. So that accounting technician that you're seeing out there in the League of Minnesota Cities matches what we're having. Plus we kind of add in utility billing and the payroll that kind of merge it all together, but
Did you
this
see,
is similar to what you're gonna see for other communities.
did you see any AP clerk or AR clerk?
Not,
That's my jargon. That's the stuff that I use is reading.
Right.
that's not, when you look at the League of Minnesota Salary Survey, they're not using that. Those are job duties that are encompassed into like your accounting tech position. But you're not seeing AP clerks out there anymore, or AR clerks. I've looked at, not all of these communities that are on the comparable list. I don't have their pay scales for all of them directly, but I do on several of them, and you just don't see those terms. You're seeing accounting technician
What did you just Google?
or utility billing clerk.
Accounts payable clerk salary in Minnesota, 22.16 per hour.
And so I just wanted to make sure that this is a complex enough job that it's valid to pay at 2062 is the minimum in this job is what you're proposing.
That's what's proposed, yes, based off of the job description, the comparable salaries that are being paid by the communities around us and comparable communities. And this is a comparable job description and job duties and responsibilities that we would see with those communities.
It's well, like I said, I'm in favor of this. It's not a lot of dollars. When you're talking 10 to 15 hours. But I want to get on the record that it's the principal thing, and I don't want to be hiring people that in a more complex job than what we really need. And there is some items on the job description you're going to keep in there that you we're expecting these people, this person to also. I forget what it was, there's a couple other bullet points besides billing, payroll and AP. So they're gonna provide grant management, including research apps, tracking and solutions, they're gonna assist with the annual audit. They're going to create, maintain special assessment engineering project files and monitors, so. They're doing more than what we had talked about. They're gonna coordinate the annual property liability, workers' comp insurance renewals, so they are. We're gonna have them do more than what we're talking about tonight then.
Those are, I mean, those are additional bullets that are in there, assist with the annual audit, including preparation schedules and work papers. I mean, they're in there. Working and doing the AP, they're working with the vendor files, and so helping out with all that stuff, how much they can, you know. How much are they actually doing with schedules and work papers? We'll see, kind of probably depends upon the skill set of the individual, and at 10 to 15 hours a week. They're not gonna have a whole lot of additional time for that one. The special assessment engineering project files, that's, you know, just helping with the special assessment process, that's typical of this kind of a position to help with. Those kinds of things. Grant management, I mean, writing it in to say, you know, it's a possibility if we start getting grants and we staff some of that, we need some help with it, that they have. You know, it's kind of, they have the ability to be able to help us if we need it.
And you have people out that don't know how to do that, so all they wanna do is they, you know.
Maybe you should just say assist with other clerk duties.
Hmm.
Or something like that, because you're not really just, what you just described is not them actually really doing any of that. They're helping with accounting principles at that point, so maybe that's just needs to be removed from the description.
We can take out the grant management and just make the audit as assist with audit requirements.
Right.
Other duties as assigned.
That's a sign is in there, it's in there.
Yeah.
But you know, they'll have the ability to, hopefully it's not in here directly, is helping with the escrows and probably some there's
Yeah.
time escrow
The escrow.
reconciliations. Just depends upon when we get the primary responsibilities of accounts payable, accounts receivable, utility billing and payroll. How much in that 10 to 15 hour window do we have for any of these other pieces?
And that's why I didn't know we were gonna have this position do those things. I mean, in the future, we can supplement the job description, but I don't wanna take a chance on people passing the job, where they just want a simple job, or having to hire someone that has this knowledge and skill set. And then now we have to pay them more, because we're gonna ask them to do this extra stuff. To me, this is more than just clerk related stuff, some of these bullets. So
We
I
can
think
do those
with
two.
AP, payroll and AR. Would be my suggestion.
And audit, I would say,
Well,
Assist with-
and they can follow it to other duties as assigned and, yeah. I think again, then that lands on what's the skill set, what's the time, hours,
Yep.
everything available, so, yeah.
and I would just make the comment on the audit bill that the majority of it would be home.
Right.
Yeah.
Files, you know, kind of humdrum of an audit.
Yep. Okay. Anything else? Otherwise, if people are comfortable, I take a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Hayden. Anybody ready a second?
One second.
Thank you, Leroy. I've got a motion and a second to approve the part-time accounting technician position. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Moving on to general business number 2, consider approval of new compensation structure, Administrative Reynolds.
It's up here. All right, so when we talked about 2024 budget, we had discussions on the compensation table. Kind of as we started looking at the cost of living adjustments and making cost of living adjustments to the table with the 2024 budget. And at that time, the discussion was such that we wanted to look at an alternative means and an alternative way of kind of the compensation table that we have in place today. So kind of started along those lines and put together some information and trying to propose something out, like to get something in place so that as we go into 2025 budgeting, we have a baseline of a table that we can be comfortable with as a starting point for our 2025 budgeting. So tonight we're looking at this. I kind of did, talk first about an implementation guide. So how is it used? How is the table used? And some bullet points to kind of be part of this to kind of help explain the process and how the compensation table is implemented. So new hires, city administrator recommends to the council the starting step. And it's based on the experience, education, and job-related skills that the individual is bringing to the position. Obviously, they're coming in with the bare minimum. You're looking at step one. If you have somebody with far exceeds your skills, you may look at putting them up higher within the step scale. Promotions, I'm just saying that the city administrator would recommend to the council the step placement for promoted employees based on their experience, education, and job related skills. And then the statement consideration will be given to the previous compensation and the change in responsibilities and authorities. Talked through this many times in previous locations, where if you're moving up to, if you're being promoted, you don't just move to the next step or the promoted scale at the step that's the one step above what you're currently making. If that's only a minor change and you're receiving all these additional responsibilities and have all this additional authority, then you need to kind of look at that too as we look at making the adjustment and what's the appropriate place to put somebody that's being promoted onto the promoted position scale. Well, that's just kind of what that statement says. Step adjustments. This is a little bit of an eye chart putting it on here, but just employees that move to the next step on the scale on their anniversary date, which is the date of hire, until they've reached the last step on the scale. Employees who've been promoted will move to the next step on their scale on their promotion date until they've reached the last step on the scale. That way you don't get promoted and placed on the scale 1 month, and next month have your anniversary date and immediately move to another step. So your date of promotion then takes over as your movement date on the scale. We have in here the administrator may recommend to council that an employee receive an additional step adjustment based on performance, experience, change in job responsibilities, etc. So there's an ability to move them further than just one step if circumstances have changed. It gives the city administrator the ability to withhold an annual step adjustment if an employee is on a performance improvement plan. And then the administrator should consider implementing the step adjustment upon successful completion of the performance improvement plan. And just kind of this one and the next bullet, I have that authority with the city administrator that keeps and brings us, so we are not bringing performance improvement plans and disciplinary action to a public meeting and running into issues with trying to discuss those in a public setting. So it provides authority for the administrator to have that as in the way it's drafted currently. And then the city administrator may withhold an annual step adjustment for an employee who has been subject to disciplinary action within the previous 12 months. And it just says consideration should be given to the type of discipline, the severity of the subject of the discipline, and their overall performance when determining if a step adjustment should be withheld. If it's a write-up just to document something minor, and you're not looking to withhold, but if it's something more severe, that may be appropriate. So that's kind of some guidelines for the implementation of a scale as it has been drafted. And then looking at the proposed compensation table. So the current compensation table has 6 steps and goes for a 25% range on each position. This proposed step has 10 steps on it with an equal 2.5% across for each step adjustment. And with the way it's set up with this, that now lowers it from a 25% range to a 24.89, not huge, but it is just a minor change. It was all implemented and prepared. Step one has remained the same across all positions, so that minor reduction from 25% to 24.89 is coming off of the top of the scale at this point. And you can see the accounting technician, we did put that onto this scale. And set it out with the proposed range in the position that was just approved. So that's kind of the new proposed, taking into account some of the thought processes about the amount between each of these steps in the current scale. This was kind of a proposed method of changing it up and putting it out here for discussion. I do have the 24, the adopted scale, just as a reference point here. So you can see the current scale that we have in effect, the 6 steps. You can see the percent changes between each of the steps on the current scale and the 25% rounding. So this is where we're at today. Like I said, the other scale is kind of the proposed for council to look at, have some discussions, and happy to take any feedback from there. Table transition, I put some information in here on transition. We would bring back more information if this is the compensation table that we want to work with moving forward. We can bring back some more information on kind of on transition and what that looks like, but I just wanted to kind of put some information out there for part of this discussion. Typically like this, I would propose and recommend that we would do the new table would have an effective date of December 31st, 2024. Any COLA adjustments with the 2025 budget process would then be made to this new table. And then you look at staff placements onto it and how do we transition from the current scale onto the new scale. The option that I have seen implemented in the past is everybody is placed on the 2024 scale, so that December 31st effective date, they're placed on that scale and the step closest to their current compensation without a decrease in pay. And then if there's any adjustments, then they're on that step, they get that January 1st cost of living adjustment that may have been made to the scale. And then on the anniversary date, they would move to the next step on the scale. A second option for implementation would be to place individuals, instead of placing them on the 24 scale, would be to move them directly to the 2025 scale, kind of with the COLA adjusted scale, with placing them on the step closest to their current compensation without a decrease. And then the 2025 anniversary, they would move to the next step on the scale. Like I said, more detail on transition options can be brought back. I didn't want to put in a lot of work on those until I knew that this is something that we were comfortable with this scale, or if there's further adjustments, we make that information on the correct scale. I did do just a sample to kind of understand those options, because I think it helps to maybe visualize what it is as we look at it. So I just pulled up the city administrator, my contract set my current salary at 130,000. So if we look at December 24th at $130,000, we followed option 1 that placed me on step December 31st on step 6 at 131. And then on January 1st, the 2025 scale, I would be there on step 6. And then on my anniversary date, it would move to a step 7. Option 2, if we look at the same way, if we looked at placing it directly onto a 2025 COLA adjusted table, I just did an assumption of, just for purposes of demonstration here, I did a 3% COLA. So if we adjusted the table 3% for COLA for 2025, and we put directly onto the 25 scale, that would put my salary directly onto step 5 of 131,883, and then anniversary date would move to step 6. So you can kind of see a little bit of a nuance of how it could work. Like I said, I don't want to necessarily focus the discussion right now today on the transition. I just wanted to kind of provide that as some information, some thought processes as we look at it. but really to focus in on the table as it's been proposed. I'll go backwards to that, and see if this is more in line with where council would like to see it, if this is something that we want to work with. If not, recommendations for what changes you would like to see for it to be brought back. And happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Administrator Reynolds. Council members? Questions, thoughts?
I have one.
Sure.
I would like to maybe see, instead of the city administrator having full authority of either giving someone a promotion or a demotion, I would like to see possibly turn it into a 3-person, like the mayor and deputy mayor or whatever we have for a assistant mayor. I'm not sure what the title is, but those 2 individuals to be added onto with the city administrator, so 3 people would, not just 1 person making that decision.
Be in favor of
That way, whoever the mayor is or the junior mayor. I don't know. Acting,
mayor.
that's what it is.
Junior mayor.
I don't,
I guess the
Junior
comment,
mayor.
the comment I have on that though is if we're running, if they're within budget, whatever we decide on what the budget is, as long as Kathy stays within that budget. I don't like micromanaging
Yeah.
managers, and I just assume she make the decision on that. Now, if it was a $50,000 increase that we're gonna give to someone, I don't think that would ever happen, so
Well, it doesn't fit it within any of the tables or
Yeah.
anything, so there's
So
no,
Leroy, I don't know, I don't know, that would make. Doesn't matter to me. If the council wants to do that, that's fine, but I don't have any. Reason to want to do that.
yeah, I would agree with you, Bill. I mean, at some point you have to be able to delegate authorities at some point within budget
Within
to
budget.
staff, right?
Right, I think
And-
maybe it better,
I
you're
mean,
gonna go outside of budget because she wants to give a big promotion to somebody, then she has to bring it to council, or she has to bring it to the subcommittee.
yeah, I think that those are more the one-offs that, you know, something that would be off. I mean, when you think about, especially when they, in the scenarios that were suggested when it comes to employee performance or discipline or something like that, you know, to get a whole council involved in that,
Right.
you know, kind of makes it a little,
I don't want to
Tricky
bring
to
it
be-
HR, yeah.
yeah.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, are we not in this action creating the budget for it?
Well, the budget would have to follow in the subsequent years,
Yeah.
you know.
For next.
So in other words, you know, part of the budget process would be is to look at current staff and to say these people are in these steps expected to be in these steps. Now, here's how we budget out the payroll, right? 100%, you know, so it does fall within. But what the 2 steps, I think, and what Lou was talking about is that the administrator may withhold an annual step adjustment if an employee is on a PIP. Or considering, you know, some sort of, you know, an adjustment after completion of a PIP. Again, performance management stuff, you know, that's stuff that I don't know that a council member is gonna know that's necessarily going on, or the details around that anyways. And of course, the disciplinary action, that stuff is confidential to the HR file. Unless it's really bad.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to know what the other council members, what their thoughts are on having this type of compensation table. It's very common in government. It's not at all common in the private sector. It's more lucrative, in my opinion, than in the private sector. And I'd like to get other thoughts, because, you know, I did submit a plan that I'd like to see the city use. That's more in line with what I'm used to. And I believe more fair to taxpayers. But I could be totally off base on that, and I'd like to know what your thoughts are on using this step approach. Because it is, kind of like I said, it's common and all the city governments use it, the school district unions use it, all that's, you know. It is what it is.
Yeah, Bill, you're right, it is different from, you know, private sector positions and thinking through that piece of it, discussing what we talked about before, it's gonna be hard to hire somebody for the accounting tech position, right? I think the more outside we get from being competitive with the people that we're competing for, so cities around us are competing for the same people, especially when you come into public works people and other positions that are specific municipal employees. If we're way outside of the norm, we're gonna struggle for applicants for those positions, especially the ones we want, right? So if we think about, you know, we had an email exchange about the NSU rates. One of the opportunities to save on those rates is we hire the proper public works person that could get certified to operate that. That takes it all away from the contractor, brings it all in-house. But if we're outside the norms on a pay scale or something that they would be used to or expecting in a position like that, we probably aren't gonna find the proper person for that. And then we continue to have to pay the contractor to do that, right? Rather than utilizing in-house staff. That'd be my fear, Bill, is, and I understand what
I'm
you're
in
saying.
favor of salary ranges. I
Mhm.
mean, that's common salary, you know, you
Yeah.
have a midpoint of a job and you have. My experience is 20% less than the midpoint is minimum, 20% above
Mhm.
midpoint is maximum. So you have a salary range within that job. You hire the person where, whatever you can. If you have to pay more, you have to pay more. As long as it's within that salary range, it's okay.
Mhm.
But there's no guarantee step every year. What happens if the city is running out of money? Well, our compensation plan, and it's not.
Attaboy, Bill.
I'd like to have flexibility in saying, as a city council, that this year we want to give 3 to 4, 3.5, 2.5 to 3.5% raises to folks, and that's what our budget is, and leave it to Kathy to do whatever she wants to do with it. So if you have some star performers, you know, and they're low at the midpoint, they're low end of the range, you give them a little more than the average. And if you have people that have been in the job a long time and they do good work, but at the higher end of the range, they get a smaller percentage. It averages out to what the city council recommends for the year. I just prefer that type of model than every year. I mean, let's say inflation next year goes to hell again and it's 8%. And we're gonna be asked to approve a COLA of 8% plus another 2.5%. So that's a 10.5% raise. And when you have taxpayers looking at that and their paychecks are getting 3 to 4% or 5 or 6, you know, it in their heads, in my head, it's not there. So I'm not in favor of doing these step tables. I'm in favor of having a salary range for each job, having the jobs slated, going to we used to use Mercer, going to somewhere that have salary ranges for specific job types, job descriptions. Using those to do your salary ranges. They get modified every, few years because of inflation and all that stuff. But we take that into account too when we're giving out raises. And doing it that way, then doing these steps. That is what I proposed to Kathy, and that wasn't considered.
I'd like to see your proposal.
I don't know what the protocol is on that. And that's why I wanted to, and I was thinking, well, maybe I'm just I'm off base here, and if we're the only city that does this, it's probably going to be hard to like get comfortable with it, but someone's got to start somewhere, and I want to mind starting a new trend. Otherwise I can see cities just like, oh, what do you want? Oh, let's offer 6. Okay, I went offer 6 too. And the wage inflation is too high. I mean, tonight we talked about the accounting technician job, and when you look at the Bureau of Labor statistics, a job like that probably is $24 $24 an hour, not 28. But because we're using government salaries versus private sector salaries, that's the thing, and it's the same job. Whether it's public or private, when you're talking about some of those tasks. So I've said my piece, and I will do whatever the city council. Majority wants to do, but I'm probably not gonna, I'm not gonna vote in favor of this. What I mentioned.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Anybody else?
I'd like to see more options. I think I'm listening to that, I would like to see what Bill was offering and consider. I probably wouldn't be in support of it either.
I live in the private sector world too, so I'd be interested in why can't it be more like private sector? I'd love to hear both sides, because I don't want to put the city in a bad spot. But at the same point, are we competing with other cities, or are we just competing with other positions? I don't know the answer to that. So if there's, a municipality, maintenance worker is much different than maybe some other, so that one does, in my mind, we are competing with
Yes,
municipalities, right?
Without a doubt.
But accounting tech. There's components that maybe is unique to that, but. I guess that'd be my question is, if we do that, what does that really mean? Does that cause a severe constraint on bringing in people, having people stay? How did we get here? I don't know.
I'll just speak. I've seen that kind of a structure in one somewhat local governmental unit. And I can tell you my experience with that one was where you did it performance based. In that situation, there was about 20, I think it was 25, 28 employees. 4 employees shared the whole raise, and the other 21 basically received, pittance, because it was given to the director's friends. And that's my experience in looking at your kind of performance. Well, you can decide how, or here we'll just set this amount and then split it out. However, so if you're going to set up some kind of a structure like that, then, my position would be is that you have to have a very detailed performance metrics based system. I just tying performance to pay, you've now defeated the whole purpose of your performance evaluation, because now it's no longer about an evaluation for performance. It becomes an evaluation to how much compensation am I going to get? And
I don't understand what you just said. You can't tie pay with performance.
I don't like that. I don't recommend it, because it becomes a system of, instead of doing a performance evaluation to evaluate somebody for their performance and then focusing on the performance factors, it becomes a matter of evaluating somebody. They're not listening to what the performance factors and any things there. It's all about, how did I do? So how much money am I going to get? It loses its purpose of being a performance tool and becomes a compensation tool when you tie compensation to performance. That's kind of been my experience. That's what I see. That's what it's kind of my reflection upon that is, you've now defeated your performance evaluation. It's become a compensation evaluation. And then you get into favoritism realms. So if you want to look at that kind of a system, my recommendation would be is that my recommendation would then come back to you of hiring a consultant to develop a performance-based metrics system to make it as objective as you possibly can, so that you take out the equation. And I'll tell you, as soon as you get a union involved, that all goes out the door, as well as, any of these statements that I have in here about performance improvement plan or a, discipline. Unions will throw chaos at those. I've had to deal with it before, so just, they don't like it. It's automatic. So that just my thought processes on that. We can look at it. I just, those are my concerns with those kinds of systems. And how do we develop one that is as objective as it possibly can be to avoid the favoritism that runs rank in those kinds of systems in my experience.
And whether or not the favoritism is true or not, I suppose. I guess that's the other thought process, right, is. If you're off of something like this, is that more of an opportunity for a collective bargaining? Group or people to get into, right? Because if you're not if you're in a position, one of these, public works positions. And you don't feel like you were treated fairly at your performance review piece, does that opens the door for collective bargaining?
Yeah,
We just don't have the employees there in place.
Not yet.
I understand that, but I think that.
So-
we could
so-
probably.
Something
we
might
could probably
work for a
save
short
this.
term, right?
I mean, we
I
could probably
mean,
take
but-
this for a couple of years. 'Cause we just don't, I mean, we're talking about,
You might be surprised,
I understand that.
can one person form a union?
I imagine.
Gotta be more than one.
Well,
Is it like 3/4 of the workforce or something like that? Is there a percentage? Or- Gotta be more than one though, okay.
I'm sorry, I was a little bit flippant, Mr. Mayor, Councilman
Go
Munford,
ahead.
but, I'm not a labor lawyer, I couldn't give you the exact percentage, there is a vote. You don't have a very large population right now, so it wouldn't be very hard to get to that number.
Yeah.
That changes as we go.
Yeah. Kathy, are you asking for a approval of this or just direction for tonight to move this to, I mean. Clearly, if we wanted to do this, we'd have to write a resolution for,
Twofold, if we're comfortable with this, then it's kind of, okay, we've got. We can. If you're comfortable with this one, we can approve it, we can say, all right, we're good with this, we can wait and have more transition conversations, and then we can come back with kind of. More details on implementations and kind of that transition onto this type of a scale. If this is not where we want to go, last time when we had the conversation, I kind of said, well, what do you want to see? And that's when I'd go back to again. If we're just looking and, what we want to see is a performance-based system with the ranges, well, then we've got the ranges, and I guess performance-based system, I would say, do I get contractor support to help write it? Because I don't have the time to build a contractor-based system. And I'd like to have something in place so we know what we're doing with 25's budget.
So question, wouldn't you need that also for your third and fourth bullet on recommending to council that an employee receive an additional step or withholding a step? That seems very arbitrary too, so you would need to have that for that.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at it and say that, yes, do we, those are arbitrary, why are we doing them? Receiving an additional step adjustment based on performance, experience, change in job responsibilities, etc. I think that's very rare that what we're looking at, but are they taking on a lot more responsibilities than what they previously had? At which point in time, we should probably look at, do we have the right job description and is it all paid out correctly? Which is part of that process. That also gives you the flexibility in today's environment, which was the comment was made at the last one, is if somebody's ready to leave, then we should think about, do we want to pay them more? Well, this is kind of that ability to say, all right, you stand to lose this person, do you want to look at an additional step to see if you can retain them instead of going back through the recruitment and hiring and training process? So that one kind of gives you that flexibility that at the last meeting was the statement that was being made. The disciplinary action is one thing, performance improvement plan is based off of, how their performance is doing. And, ideally, I guess a simple performance system, we need to put that in place, but it's one thing, it's a performance evaluation system. That's just doing performance, then if it's one that's trying to objectively be tied to a compensation system.
Is this step, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Martin.
is this step The 2.5% is, what is that? What is that for? Is that for just tenure? It's just you're another year, so you assume you have more experience? Is that what that is for?
That's,
It has nothing to do with performance.
it has nothing to do with performance. It's basically, it's tenure. You've been here for a year and you know, your job, you should be getting more fluent in your job and experience and your, you know, the pay is increasing for it.
Because eventually you hit a threshold that you can't be any more of an IEP clip. I mean, there's, unless you invent some new thing, it's you do that job every day. But in a step approach, every year we give another 2.5%.
Well, until you hit the last step.
Until the last step.
Mhm. Right, and then it's just COLA after that.
Mhm.
At that, provided you don't do anything to further your career. And be ready for the next opportunity in the organization.
I'm all favor for bringing in people where we have to bring them in. That's not an issue.
Mhm.
It's just a matter after we have them in there. We want to treat them well, we want to pay them as much as we can. We just don't want to overpay. Or underpay. You know,
What happens when you have numerous steps? That aren't-
Then it's
And all of a
COLA.
sudden you're-
Yeah, you either gotta
What
be
keeps
ready
you there?
for. Well,
What keeps you there?
it's that-
You've gotten used to a
The
cost of living.
opportunity,
If you've gotten used to a cost of living increase plus a step. You know, as you go along, all of a sudden you're kind of there and now you're not gonna get. Half of what you were expecting. What keeps you there? You know, it actually, it starts to me, it seems like it's setting up to. Say goodbye to a good employee at some point. By doing that.
Maybe after the steps, we go to Bill's way.
well, or it's after that, you would hope that they were ready for another position in the
If
organization.
you run it my way though, they would
Or
already be
somewhere
at-
in between there.
they'd be at the max too. And we call it red line. Once you get to a max, you circle that salary. They may get a lump sum if they did a great job or something like that, but you don't increase their hourly rate or the annual wage anymore. I mean, it is what it is. That job is pays this amount of maximum. And that's all they get paid, but then we give out a bonus, kind of like a lump sum if we want it.
Or a new job title.
Right, and
Well, that's,
actually,
and again, that's the opportunity, right? So
We
you
hope no
you
one
hope
ever-
to develop people in your organization, right? And
yeah, we hope never to have people at the max because we want them to get a higher paying job or, you know, move up.
they want to
Get promoted.
develop, you want to develop your team.
Um, I'd like to make a motion that we have a work session, talk about different compensation plans. This is one. Yeah, I have one that I'd like you guys to consider, but I haven't sent it to you. I sent it to Kathy. And talk about. And if, I'll go with the majority thing. I mean, I don't like that, but if that's what you guys think.
I think it's super important to do something like that as we continue to have more and more employees come in. The city is starting to see more and more money going out. And are we spending our money wisely? I think that's a very important piece to say. Let's look at all the sides of the puzzle and to be able to say, is that gonna get us in a bad place, a good place? What's that gonna do for employee retention? What's that gonna do for employee recruitment? And be able to understand, is it gonna need some consulting? Let's look at the whole picture. It doesn't seem like we're in a huge rush, so let's not rush into it. Let's take a little bit of time and talk through it.
So let's think about this, so timeline, Kathy and Dominique, if we're thinking about. And you said no rush, the only rush and only timeline might be is when do we start working on budget for next year, right? So so we should look at that, work backwards from there. And then, I mean, I think it'd be more than happy to say, if you want to ask for more options at the next council meeting, we can have more options.
I think one of the other Kathy's concerns is that we have a county tech we just approved tonight. We have the public works position that we're looking at. and
Right.
We want to. I don't know if you propose, do you show them the step approach when you're interviewing them, if they ask?
I've already on the public works been asked the range, the salary range, the hiring range. and have already had to explain those, so, people, it just becomes more complicated. You hire them under one table and they're looking at that, and then we're moving them to, some other totally different type of potentially compensation system. So it would be nice to have something kind of figured out, but we can we can look at others, like I said, there's minimal, a performance-based system would take some additional work that we would have to put into to get it there. But we can look at those. The timeline would be, is like I've said, I would love to have it in place before I interview people so they know what they're looking at, but we can work with that one. Budget purposes, we start into budget preps and budget discussions in May, and it would be nice to know what the compensation system is going to look like by May, so we can work with that into that preliminary budget, and we know where we're at. If we're using, the system and the scale that we have today, that puts us in one position. If we're, looking at this scale, that puts us in a different place. If we're looking at, a performance-based system where we're just saying we're gonna put 3% in the budget, and then on top of our annual salary, amount, and there's a 3% dollar figure that can be split however amongst all of the employees. Well, that's another, like I said, that's another system for, to prep the budget. So we just need to know what that looks like.
So I guess I'd suggest that, you guys give Kathy any comment, whether it's tonight or this week. And then we put this on the next agenda again and have another discussion over it with more options of what you'd like to see.
Or you wanna bring it back for first, have a workshop like Bill's talking?
It doesn't really matter, then we're just paying us all to come for another night. We can do this during.
Do it right after.
I'd like to
During the-
communicate to you guys.
Right,
Without,
I would rather have a workshop, I'm gonna suggest that we do it like after the first meeting of March. Or right after it, just have a workshop right after. That gives some time to get the information out and get it in and digest it and put it into a workshop. And his package can be explained, and maybe we have something else, we have some other thoughts.
we can't do. Correct me if I'm wrong, I can't send something to Kathy shares it with the city
Mhm,
council, and then we
yeah.
talk about that at the next meeting. Can we do that?
Mhm.
Is that, do we need a workshop?
It wouldn't make any difference. I mean, the meeting would just be extended.
Oh.
We can just do it. At this point, the point of the work session is really was so you have that discussion piece, but you can do it just as easily as we're doing it right now in a council meeting. Our work session for us is no different than the council meeting. It's still televised at this point with the bylaws. You're still televising it. You're still doing everything the same, so it doesn't have to be a separate work session. It can come back and be a discussion item at the end of an agenda, so in theory, we've finished up everything else and it's just working on that one. I do have stuff planned all the way out, and I don't remember where some of the items are, so I need to balance when it comes in with the other items that are forecasted out right at the moment on the agenda, so we have timings done right.
So why don't we do this? If you guys would get your suggestions to Kathy this week. I'll work with Kathy on an agenda time where we can bring this back and we'll put it at the end of the agenda and continue the discussion then with any other options that you'd like included in that discussion. Okay. But I would say let's get the suggestions in this week so we have time to work on anything prior to that.
We cheat.
Okay. All right. It's the end of our general business for tonight. Let's move into staff and council member reports. We'll start with Administrator Reynolds.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one announcement for this evening. In the February Planning Commission meeting has been canceled. We don't have any agenda items for the Planning Commission, so just kind of an FYI on that. Otherwise, I don't have anything else at this time.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody, anything?
Nope.
Leroy?
Yeah. First time since I've been on the board in 24 years that we bladed the gravel roads February 1st. And everybody's happy, so
Incredible.
we're saving on snow plowing, but we're wearing out the cutting edges. So
Yeah, right.
Oh, is it what, every other time we go through a cutting edge?
probably every 3.
Every 3 times? Yeah. Although it's probably pretty soft right now.
Came out good.
Good. Okay. I got a couple things here tonight. Number one, just a point of information. Interesting, Prior Lake Rotary in April is gonna have the Secretary of State join. To talk about upcoming elections and stuff like that. I think that one's gonna be open to more than, I mean. What it sounded like elected officials and others in the community. Things out of the scale exec meeting from last Friday. There are some in scale, some sub work groups, right? So service delivery is generally administrators, tech team is generally, planners, engineers of sorts. The tech team had kind of talked a little bit about, there's been a couple of opportunities where some urban expansion proposals came into some areas where, Jordan, Spring Lake had those ones and stuff like that. How do you work around that? And I mean, they weren't they didn't have any direction or anything of coming solutions, but that was a topic of discussion for quite a while at that meeting, I understand. Emergency management training is coming up. If anybody's still interested in that, I think the county was providing that. It is a big time commitment because it was 4 hours for 4 Wednesdays or something like that, but I don't know if anybody had signed up for that. Then interesting, just a little follow-up on the Met Council Task Force, the legislative task force. So they submitted.
dissolve it?
No, they submitted, well, they did because they submitted their report.
Oh,
So last week,
dissolve the tax.
the last Thursday, they met and submitted their report to the legislature. They couldn't narrow it down to any of the options, so they submitted them all, and then on top of that, I think 6 of the members of the task force also submitted a minority report to follow with that, with all kinds of other opinions on it, so. It is, yeah. As you can imagine, that probably doesn't leave much for the legislature to have any action, so.
Where's it posted?
I'm sure on the legislator somewhere, I have it in email form, but I can see if I can find
Could she?
I
Administrator forward that around?
yeah, I'll pass it on to Kathy. Thank you. And then just next or this Friday coming up, scale meeting. Kind of the agenda has some nonprofits in our community. We're going to talk for a short time, Treehouse, Heart Ministries in Damascus Way. Again, interesting. Our Met Council rep will be there to talk about the 2050 regional development guides and policies. That's on the agenda. That's all I've got. Jay, anything? No. Bill?
I have one item, excuse me. As you all know, 3 seats in the planning commission are coming up for reappointment or appointment. And we had applications come to us. They were due by January 26th, I believe. We received 10 applications. The screening committee made up of Mayor Costick, myself, 2 members of the planning commission, and our planner, Matt. We screened 4 of the candidates. We called them we had a meeting looking at all of the applicants. And we willed it down to 4 candidates that we would consider final. And those interviews, we're gonna have face-to-face interviews coming up this week. There's one on Wednesday and then the rest are on Thursday. And we should be able to make a recommendation to the city council on what our recommendations are at the next meeting. So that's where we're at with that. So 10 applications. I thought there'd be more, but it's good. I think we had more the first 2 years ago.
I think we had 14, so not too many more. Yeah,
Couple dropped out though.
yeah, a couple dropped out right away, so, yeah.
But a good selection. We had northern citizens, we had southern citizens, so that's good.
Interesting, some new names have popped up, which is great to see some new names pop up on the list of people. And some familiar faces. Yeah.
So I don't get my big send off since we're canceling the planning commission meeting. So I just want to say I enjoyed it in the chair for the last 2.5 years. It was a great learning experience and I've met a lot of people in both in the community and I enjoy working there, so.
Perfect. Well, thank you for participating in that. And thank you for also participating here as well. And hopefully one of them continues on.
Yeah.
So, perfect. All right. Anybody else?
I'll make a motion to adjourn, please.
Motion to adjourn,
Second.
second by Councilmember Satterbox. I've got a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed?
No.
Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening.